Welcome back into the Fantasy Sanctuary. We're back with another best ball show, and this time we've got somebody who I'd class as a real friend in the best ball community, James Brimacombe of FootballGuys. If you've drafted a best ball team in the last few years, there's a very good chance at some point you've run into Eaglezzz in the draft room. James, this feels like your time of year. How are you doing?
Yeah, it feels like a long off season already, and we're just in June. So yeah, I'm great. Yeah, just busy with running kids around and doing all that kind of stuff. And I got two boys doing the hockey thing, so we're at the rink almost every day. So if I'm not drafting best ball, I'm at the hockey rink.
So as well as being a serial grinder in the best ball drafts for the NFL, you kind of multi-sport as well. How much do you prefer? Like, is NFL your true love when it comes to best ball? Is the NHL where you really kind of like just get drawn back to?
Well, I grew up in Toronto, Canada, so I spent like my first half of my life there. Hockey was a big part of my life, and that's like I didn't even know football. My older brother, he kind of introduced me to football, probably my teens, and that's kind of when I fell in love with it. And yeah, when I moved to the U.S., it's football or bust here. Like, yeah, nothing else matters. So, so I like all the sports. I mean, I follow all the sports, but it's hard to keep up on everything. And yeah, I kind of view all the best ball sports on Underdog and whatnot as kind of like a bankroll management kind of portfolio to help my NFL portfolio end of day. So that's kind of why I've dived into all those streets, chase some overlay and stuff like that. But
Yeah, so you kind of touched on it, but one thing that's definitely sets you apart from a lot of people is you're a real high volume drafter. I mean, you've had success on multiple different platforms and multiple different types of contests. Can you tell me a bit about when you first started drafting in a high volume, like when it really lured you into those kind of like, okay, one draft isn't enough. I need, this is so much fun. I'm just going to keep firing.
I think it's just we fall in love with the draft in general. Back in the day, just redrafts, and I couldn't get enough of them, and I started getting a dynasty, and I got in 10 plus teams. I did IDP, I did all the stuff. I tried it all, and I was trying to work the waiver wire for 20 plus teams or whatever, and it just got exhausting. And I saw people talk about MFL 10s and things like that. So I jumped in a few of those. I was like, oh, wow, this opened my eyes. And, the first year I think I did maybe 10 or 20 of them. Next year, maybe 100. And then draft came along and everything else has followed. And it's just been, hundreds of them. And yeah, it's kind of what I do. So it's a lot of fun. It's a hobby.
Yeah, I mean, for me, drafting, like, I used to play a lot of fantasy Premier League, being based in England, like before I got involved with fantasy football. And then the first time I drafted, it was a home league on NFL.com, and it was 5 minutes per pick. And I look back now at that, like 5 minutes per pick, it took us all night. And now when you've got 30 seconds on the clock, you just become very in tune with the draft. So quite often you do multiple drafts at the same time to kind of get the kind of volume that you're looking to get. What kind of little tricks or cheats have you found that really help you be able to draft when you draft in 4 or 5 teams at once?
So I know people love the desktop drafting, and that's a big thing. There's a lot of tools out there. There's a lot of add-ons you can put in. They're big week 17 guys or this or that. They believe in fully. For me, it's more. I love my phone. That's where I draft from, and that's where I can draft. I could draft up to 10 teams at a time if I had to, and that's just not on just Underdog. Like I can have a one going on DK and one or two going on drafters, and like 4 or 5 on Underdog, and that's kind of you just kind of get to know the ADPs, you get to know your rankings. So I'll do all those, and then once they're all complete, I kind of scroll through them, look at them, look at my player exposures, see where I'm at, see who high on, who too low. Maybe I do 5 drafts in a row and I keep getting the same guy. So then I might bump him down 5 spots in my rankings. And then I'm only getting them the next time 2 out of 5 times, which is great because I'm getting the value. So I'm always like evaluating what I'm drafting, what I'm seeing in the draft rooms. And that's kind of why I like the high volume. And we're seeing it now. It's just ADP just shifts every day. So So it's just like a huge cycle all off season. And maybe I'm not on Alexander Madison now, but yeah, I was in those early tournaments when he's in the hundreds ADP. So it's just back and forth, and that's the beauty of it. It's fun. We're just playing the markets, kind of deal.
Yeah, we've got a few good people in the chat. We've got Nez, we've got Pengs there, Davis, who does great work over with a Hope on their channel, and shout out to Chris as well. Davis thrown in a quick question for you, James. Any traditions that you may have helped you win big money? I don't know, something like an Applebee's lunch with someone, just spitballing.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it really is just having friends in the community, having good quality people, being positive, shutting out the negativity out there, and just like people can say I'm wrong a lot, and I appreciate that. I want you to tell me. It's just like, hey, I kind of view this way. I think maybe you should look at this, and like that to me goes a long way. Like those are the kind of things I love. Davis, I've known him for a few years, and it's back and forth like that, where we're just friends and we're not offended when I say, I don't know, what player does Davis love? He always loves some really
DK
bad
Metcalf,
players.
Najee Harris this year.
Oh yeah, I like both those guys. See, he's war on me. So.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. Like finding people you can talk to regularly, and you can talk and you can understand where they're coming from and have intelligent conversations. But disagreeing doesn't matter. It's such a important, whether that's in Discord, whether that's group DMs on Twitter, which I know we're a part of, probably one of my favorite places to talk best ball. And it really matters, like just actually hearing different opinions, because if you're just spending time listening to content, if you're just reading the same site all the time, it gets very easy to end up being severely overexposed to a player, because that person, no matter how good an analyst they are, it can be very easy to just have their takes rub off on you. Is there any particular sort of levels of player exposure that you find like you just want to stay away from, or are there players where you just like you can never have too much of them?
That's a great question. I think honestly, it is. I don't think I have complete fades out there, but then I run my numbers and then I look at them. I'm low on some players, and I was like, oh, I didn't realize I was low on those players. I didn't realize I didn't like them. So then I kind of evaluate, and I think I put out a tweet yesterday, just kind of all my low exposure guys, and the community was great, sharing some points to me and who I maybe should start looking at some more. So yeah, I don't know if I have a number. I don't like to completely fade anyone. I'll draft anybody at a cost, at a price, and that's my volume drafting mindset. Where, and that's why I don't push back on week 17. It's fine if you want to do it, but I don't have the time to do that, and I don't know. That is just not my thing. I'd rather look at my ownerships, and I'd rather mix and match players in. And I think naturally I'm just going to, if I make the finals, I make the finals. Like, I don't think it's one of those things I have to scope out and build just for that week where, and I know you say I'm a value or a volume drafter, value and volume drafter, I guess, but I do play more of the lower stake stuff. Anytime I see like the $5 and under, like that's my jam. That's where I want to be. So there's other volume drafters out there doing 25 plus. They want all those big contests, and honestly, you're gonna have a better chance to win on those ones because the fields are a lot lower and your odds are going to be better that way. But yeah, I'm just drafting hundreds, a couple thousand teams, and trying to hit one out of the park.
Yeah, definitely. And it's such a good point about like, finding the contest size that are right for you, because this year, it's just blowing up. It's so crazy. There's over $35 million of prize money on the table as things stand at the minute. And it can be very easy. We're sitting here in June, the drafts have been open for over a month now. And, if you're not careful about choosing the right contest for yourself, it can be very easy to end up in a situation where by August you're suddenly starting to go, okay, well, that's my DFS pot of money, or that was money I didn't really want to put in. Are you staying pretty much in the puppies and those kind of sub $5 ones this year? I know obviously DraftKings have got their $3 contest, drafters have got their $3 contest. And then are you just mixing in a sprinkling of Best Ball Mania and bits like that?
Yeah, so I've been doing kind of the high volume drafting for probably this is my maybe 4th year doing it, kind of at the higher level. But yeah, I think it's just looking back at what worked last year and the year before and seeing where I succeeded. And then I attack kind of those kind of contests more so. And I've been trying to train my mind to each contest is a separate contest and separate tournament, and I want to change up my draft strategies in each one of those. So I might have 30% exposure to one player in one tournament, and the next tournament I enter maybe 0 exposure. So things like that I'm looking at more. But yeah, the $5, those are fantastic. I do like Best Ball Mania as well, but it's like my nemesis. I've never made the finals in there, and I've fired shots at that ever since it opened. And last year I did max that contest and 0 entries in the finals. So it's a tough one. And last year also I advanced more teams ever in that Best Ball Mania in the playoff rounds, but still 0 in the finals. So
I think it's really one of the beauties of Best Ball. It's like, no matter how much you think you can crack the code from roster construction, or even if you hit on the right players, Best Ball owes you nothing. And if you don't get the right kind of slice of luck in week 15, 16, and creep your way into the final, then it can be really difficult to ever kind of hit big. I mean, even Pat Corain's talked about his team that won the 2 million last year. He needed a healthy dose of luck on it.
A healthy dose of luck. He had to have a game get canceled, So, yeah, I would say so.
Yeah. We'll get into a draft in a minute, and we are going to just keep things slow and only go with one at a time, so I get your thoughts whilst we're doing it.
Yeah.
Do you want to tell people a little about what you've kind of do with FootballGuys in terms of the Best Ball stuff you've been doing over there?
Yeah, so my main thing there is rankings. I'm a big part of we're coming up with a new ranking system there, so it's kind of in the works, in a work in progress right now, but yeah, we're gonna have some nice rankings there for everyone, best ball related as well. We did a best ball guide here in the summer, so that's out to the public. That's like 60 plus pages, some game theory, some basic stuff for beginners. If you're looking to get into the space and draft a few teams, I think it's worth your read. Yeah, so I've been working on that stuff, and then there's probably going to be some articles along the way as well. So
yeah, and that Best Ball guide that you mentioned, it's completely free, isn't it? So if people haven't already checked it out, it's well worth it. There's some excellent stuff in there. So we'll get going into a draft in just a second. I'll bring that up. So we are going to be drafting in the Draftkings DK Milly Maker, this $10 entry. We're going to jump in now if anyone's wanting to jump in with us. 2 spaces, so not too many left over. Have you entered too many Have you entered many entries in this yet, James?
So I have actually maxed all the stuff under the $10 mark or the single entry stuff. So on DK, I kind of got those out of the way, and now I've kind of been doing one every other day here. So I did 3 today just to kind of get a feel for the room and get ready for it. So I think I'm up to 21 of these.
Okay,
on the
nice.
DK, yeah, probably a little less than you. So
yeah, I'm at about 30. I think I've been kind of grinding a little too much actual content and not doing enough drafts. So I was trying to stay away from slows, but I entered a bunch of slows yesterday and just have to take it. So we're going to be picking at pick 11, right behind Michael Harry, who's quite often in these drafts with us, does some great data visualization for Established to Run. Let us know if you're in the chat, if you're also in with us. And while you're here, we are closing in 800 subscribers. I need you to go over there and click that. 84% of people watching stuff on this channel are not subscribed, but loads of you keep coming back for more. So hit that subscribe button. Over next week, we've got Colin Kelly of RotoViz. We've got next week, I'm doing a solo show where I'll be hitting on some of the stuff from the Draftkings Milly Maker final last year and things that worked. And then a week on Wednesday, we've got Pete over there. Best ball month in June. This is it. We're just going to keep rolling. Have you found so far this year, James, that you've got a particular spot that you prefer drafting from?
Honestly, because I do so many, I like all the spots. It doesn't matter. Give me any spot and I'll figure it out. And it gives me different combos. I looked at the last 2 years, and I want a top 5 pick, and I get JT, and none of those teams are make you $1 at the end of it. So I don't think it matters. Like, I think it depends more on how you construct that whole team. So yeah, give us number 1, give us number 12, and yeah, we'll figure it out.
Yeah, I'm definitely with you on that. It's like, you look at what's there at the top, and they're great players, but so much of it, when you're picking on returns, it gets very easy to fall into similar
Mm.
roster constructions to other players as well. I found last year in particular that every time I was picking from a 101, I seemed to be getting T. Higgins early on. I had to force myself to really change things up. Michael in the chat, we were in a row of his listener league contest earlier on today, which was a very different pace to this with 60 seconds on the clock. But yeah, so I'll pull up the draft board so we can see that. See whether we get a nice normal DraftKings draft or whether we see like 5 quarterbacks go in the first round or so. Have you found, coming from Underdog and drafters, do you feel like DraftKings is getting smarter, or do you feel like it's still a way behind the pace of what Underdog is like?
Honestly, I think it's fun because it's 20 rounds and there's bonuses and it's a little different. So I like the change up. And that's why I love on Underdog when they put out a new contest or a new thing like that, you got to figure it out. So like I enjoy that. I enjoy that part. I think if you're good at what you do, I think 20 rounds is a big advantage to you. Like I know some people push the other way. I think 18 rounds, it's quicker and you got to be smarter with each pick. But I like the 20 rounds. I like what you can do. But I think, yeah, DK's got a lot better and a lot of volume there. So it's fun. Sometimes you're going to get really bad drafters because they're new and they don't know what they're doing. But
Yeah, so we're about to pick. Michael's before us, and he took Amon St. Brown. So Bijan Robinson, CD Lamb, Saquon Barkley, Devontae Adams, Garrett Wilson at the top. Anybody in particular you'd like to bang the table for, James?
I'll let you. I mean, if you want to make the first pick, yeah, you're probably. I think you're more receiver heavy, kind of to start your drafts, maybe.
Yeah, but I've been drafting a lot of Bijan Robinson. I'm gonna go. Let's go with him because he slipped a couple of points past ADP, and I just feel like soon he's going to end up by about pick 6 by the time the summer rolls around. But yeah, I mean, I feel like one thing I came away from last year feeling was that lots of things worked. So we're back on the clock now. Saquon, Garrett Wilson, Jalen Hurts, Jonathan Taylor, Jalen Waddle, or of course Nick Chubb.
Yeah, see, I like all those guys. I like Barkley, Taylor. I like Taylor a lot. I think I know people are pushing the other way on him, so I'm pushing back the other way. But he does have the same bye week, so there's a thing there. If you care about that, you could go Garrett Wilson here, maybe just to go 1-1, and we'll work our way out.
Okay, let's go Garrett Wilson. I do like Jonathan Taylor, but your point about like, yeah, 2 players on the same bye week. It's if I take 2 in the first 2 picks, 2 running backs in the first 2 picks, I'm looking at no more than 5 running backs, and it gets kind of dicey. Like you get into a situation where guys who you're picking in like round 12 are going to need to make starts for you. But yeah, I mean, Bijan Robinson and Garrett Wilson start draft definitely feels nice. Davis in the chat saying, "Thank God I suck and only do 18 rounds."
Yeah.
But it definitely does feel different. I mean, last year when I came out to America and I was drafting on Underdog for the first time, players who I was used to drafting consistently in the last 2 rounds on DraftKings, they're just not there on Underdog, and you really have to be a little, not necessarily smarter, but you have to be a little more aware that you need to get you guys when you're going to get you guys to round out the drafts. But here it feels like, you can get to round 19, round 20, and just scroll all the way down and try to get really different at times. Is that something you find yourself doing on drafters and DraftKings, try to get really obscure with the last picks?
I need to be better at that. I don't really. I mean, I have like 20 guys there at the end that I kind of mix and match depending on how my build's looking. But I don't really shy away from them. And then maybe one guy will get steamed up and they'll start going right around 17 or whatever, and then I'm out on him, and then I bring in a new guy into my portfolio. So that's kind of how I do it with all year round. So like an example of this someone brought it up in the tweet I sent, like Jerome Ford, So yeah, he was a 20-round guy for me, or a 19-round guy, and now he's like 16th round guy. He's like, okay, I'm done with him, and now I'll bring in a new guy that I want. Maybe it's Malik Davis in Dallas, or Joshua Kelly and Chargers. Like I'm trying to, and I want like those kind of players. I want them on good teams as well. And their situation, like a depth chart situation, to be pretty decent. Like I don't want them third or fourth on the depth chart. I kind of want them closer to that second. And then so yeah, there's always a lot of guys at the end. I try to look at my exposures to make sure I'm not 20% on one of those guys, because I think that's bad. Yeah, Matt Collins, love him. So
yeah, I've definitely gotten drawn into the wrong players, and sometimes it can be easy to just end up going, okay, well, I've got Jalen Hurts, so I'll take Quintus Cephas or someone like that, somebody who correlates or whatever. But trying to scroll down and just find those slightly different players is something that I do try to do more often, because I think there's definitely, every year by the time that we get to September, we're going to know far more information about these players. So
right.
that's when a lot of those players are going to really jump up, and perhaps some of them are worth chasing and some aren't worth chasing. But yeah, so this draft's played out pretty sensibly so far. Nothing too renegade over here. We've got, a Mahomes and Kelsey stack. We've got Josh Allen going in the middle of a third round, which seems about where he's kind of sliding to. I mean, he's coming up to that point where people can almost stack him with Diggs with a third round pick, which
that kind of stole him.
Yeah, it kind of feels like the kind of floor for where he'll get to. So we are 2 picks away, and it's DK Metcalf, Travis Etienne, Najee Harris, Deebo Samuel, DeAndre Hopkins, Jahmyr Gibbs, Keenan Allen. Anybody kind of standing out to you as player that you love in this range, James?
I'm a big DK. Like I think he has potential.
And DK just went before us, of course.
I'm also a Najee Harris, like a huge fan of him as well this year.
He's somebody I find difficult to click, and
okay, really?
I end up taking. But I'm happy to do so, because he's somebody that if I'm wrong, I'm going to be wrong.
Are you taking ETN over him? Because I think Najee's like a full round ahead of ETN.
I've taken 0 Etienne so far.
Yeah.
Like,
okay,
I found myself recently, like, I'm kind of more drawn to like the wide receivers a little later, Jerry Jeudy, Christian Kirk, and so we're back on the clock.
Deebo is my guy here, so like I'm always getting Deebo around here. So
Deebo's somebody that I was off on, and it's like this week I was kind of writing something about players who could bounce back this year, and I've been pretty much fading the Niners offense in general, but it feels like if Brock Purdy's there, then Deebo Samuel led the team in target share last year. He saw more rush attempts when Christian McCaffrey had actually been on the field at the same time. So the arguments against him, I ran out of arguments for reasons not to draft him. So now I'm trying to correct that before. I imagine when Brock Purdy is declared as healthy, we're going to see Deebo Samuel possibly creep into the third round a bit more often. Have you been drafting much Brock Purdy? I know that you correctly, in many ways, faded Trey Lance over the last few years.
See, that's the thing where I think Deebo is the value, because, like you said, we don't know who the starting quarterback is there, and like people are even saying like Sam Darnold is in consideration, right? So I'm a complete fade on every single 49ers QB, but I love Deebo, I love Ayuk. I'm kind of faded Kittle too, but that's for not because I don't like Kittle. That's just a position thing. We can get into that later. But I like the 49ers. I'm fading CMC too, kind of just because he's too expensive, in my opinion. And he went 101 in our draft. So
yeah, I think it's just like, we haven't really seen a huge sample size of what it's going to look like when Elijah Mitchell's healthy as well. And Christian McCaffrey struggled with injuries over the years, and I hate labeling players injury prone, but the paths to McCaffrey not paying off a top 3 pick just seem a lot easier than Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, and I'm even taking Cooper Kupp ahead of Christian McCaffrey, which has led to me having like 27% Cooper Kupp so far through like 30, 40 drafts or so.
Yep.
But
No, I'm in the same field as you there. I do, and I know you. That was one of the questions you asked at the start. Is do I have a favorite spot? It's like if I had to pick, I would pick like a top two pick. Obviously, you get Jefferson or Chase there, and it's just easy. But even a third taking Cup or a fourth taking Tyreek, like I'm fine. Like top four pick. Like I kind of want those receivers in the first round. And then the second round, as you see in this draft, you got Barkley, Taylor, Chubb. Like any three of those guys should probably be a first round pick.
yeah, I think, in about 6 weeks' time, when we're kind of into training camp, I kind of really think Jonathan Taylor's going to be right around that turn, and I think Saquon will be right, around 110 to 112 as well. I think it's really going to creep up. I think it'd be interesting to see how high Tony Pollard gets pushed, depending on what reports are like with him, because he just feels like one of those kind of players who's been fashionable. He paid off last year, and he was efficient last year. He did everything he did on like 15 touches a game, while Zeke had 17. So maybe he is a first round talent, but maybe he doesn't quite get there. So we're a couple of picks away. So through 4 rounds, we've got Bijan, Najee Harris, Garrett Wilson, and Debo Samuel. So we can kind of go a lot of different ways here. We've got a couple of picks before us. We've got Novo in the chat. I like the San Francisco offense. I think CMC is good, so I'm in at cost. Prefer around one wide receiver. That's pretty much exactly where I'm at. Like, I will end up probably with 5 to 8% CMC, but right now I just feel like Cup's price is just too appealing. So we're one pick away. Anybody in particular who you like here, James?
I like Chris Godwin. And DK, what I've noticed is QBs go pretty quick. So, like a Trevor Lawrence here, I know you don't have a stack, but I like that as well.
Yeah, I mean, we could backdoor something. Should we see if Trevor Lawrence comes back to us? Maybe take Godwin here.
Yeah, I like that.
Okay, yeah. So, and then we can always look at adding Evan Ingram or Zay Jones. I don't think anyone's expecting Zay Jones to do the same as he did last year, but I think he can definitely be a decent wide receiver this year. And it's by no certain thing that. So Trevor Lawrence does come back. Should we take him?
That's up to you. I mean, you can't stack him if you want to go that direction. I just think he's going to be better for your build going forward.
Yeah.
DK, I actually like taking just two QBs, but getting like two, if you can get like a Trevor Lawrence and a Deshaun Watson and just be done.
Yeah.
It opens up the back of your drafts a lot, especially 20 rounds. You take two QBs there. It's an 18-round draft, but you don't have to take a QB, So
Yeah.
it's really fun with your construction later. Opens a lot of windows there for you.
So we got Davis in the chat saying, "Sell me on Nick Chubb." He's not really good because he doesn't catch passes, and there was a backup or something. Well, we're certified Nick Chubb fans in these parts, and I mean, I think James, you kind of led the cause last year. You brought me on to Nick Chubb really in terms of, okay, well, look where he's going at that sort of 2-3 turn, and it paid off nicely. And this year, with Kareem Hunt out of the picture, and with it seemingly just Nick Chubb and Jerome Ford, how high do you think Nick Chubb should get into the first round, really? I know you're happy to take him at the 101 to raise a few eyebrows every now and again, but where would you start to go, okay, maybe that's a smidge too high?
I think he's better in Pollard. Like I like his upside better in Pollard. I think people are pretty high on Pollard and they just think he's a smash. But I still think there's a lot of questions with him. I do like him. I still draft him. But yeah, for me, I like Chubb. I like Chubb over Henry. I kind of like Chubb over Barkley, which they're kind of side by side. I think Chubb's like a 1-2 turn, and I think he'll get pushed up there, like Jonathan Taylor, Barkley, or Chubb, or Bijan. I think you're fine taking any of those guys, and they're all very similar. And I would just kind of mix and match them, maybe. I don't think Jerome Ford. Like, I'm not afraid of Jerome Ford, and I wasn't afraid of Kareem Hunt last year.
How much Chubb across the portfolio? 69%?
I mean, he's actually my third highest running back, so that's kind of sad, I guess. But
Sounds good. So we've got another question from Michael. For a lot of time, I was reluctant to stray too far from ADP, especially early in the draft, but recently in this range, round 5 to 6, been more willing to reach to get a stack. That's definitely how I feel. I think, we're seeing these quarterbacks being pushed up. We're seeing, the wide receivers. You want to make sure you've got them early on. And for the sake of getting a stack which you feel happy with, I feel particularly on 20 rounds, you can probably make up for it later on. Is that kind of how you're building?
Similar. Yeah, similar. Yeah, it kind of always depends kind of how the draft goes, what position you are in the draft, who's in the room with you. If you have a guy that's side by side with you that he's kind of drafting similar to you, those are always kind of tough. So
Yeah,
yeah,
definitely. I
there's
mean,
a
knowing your
lot.
draft room's big. It's a big benefit, and it's something that, particularly if you draft them and you recognize names in the room, like I mentioned earlier, I was doing a Rotoviz draft and I didn't take wide receivers when I should have. Before I knew it, I mean, I think I ended up with Brandon Ayuk as my wide receiver 2 and just chasing the draft for the rest of the way.
I mean, I have Brandon Ayuk as my wide receiver 2 in a lot of drafts. I've had him as my wide receiver 1 in a bunch of drafts too. So people love the wide receivers. So yeah, like you post any team that doesn't have like 5 receivers drafted in the first 7 picks, Twitter will hate that team. So
I mean, definitely on Underdog. Over here, it's kind of like it's a little more relaxed on DK, but yeah, it's like if you don't get to 5 by round 10, it feels like you're chasing your tail a little bit. We're 2 picks away here. Isaiah Pacheco, Rashad White, Deshaun Watson, Brandon Cooks, Alvin Kamara, Evan Ingram, Jahan Dotson, and then Dak Prescott and David Montgomery. We could take Evan Ingram. We don't have a tight end yet, which would give us a little stack with Lawrence, and I'd be all right with that. I don't feel like we need huge stacks on DraftKings. You see a lot of different type of constructions build. Do you want to go with Ingram here, James?
I'm Dotson. That's the way I would lean. I would go another
Let's go
receiver here.
Dotson. Well, I'm going to assume that that's because it'll give you this sort of week 16, 17 correlation, which I know
Oh yeah, see,
that leads all your drafts.
Honestly, I haven't even been looking at that. So I know you said I was low on one player, and I said, "Oh yeah, there's your percentages." So that's nice.
Yeah, this spike week overlays, and I definitely find it handy. I find like that when you draft with this and then go back to drafting on the app, it can definitely feel like you're missing pieces of a puzzle sometimes because I get lazy with it. Whereas last year, I knew all this kind of playoff fixtures off the top of my head, so that if there was a tie break and I wanted to break it by playoff stuff, it was easily done. But this year, I'm very lazy. Ingram makes it back around. Do you want to take him here?
See, I mean, I know you're like love the stack, so I know like that's the like
Hey, I
automatic.
don't mind getting weird here. We've got
Oh,
15 seconds.
so yeah, go. You
Anyone
can go.
else?
I mean, I would probably go Dak here and just be done at quarterback. So
Let's do
Dak's
that.
he's an unpopular pick too. So
Yeah, I think it's very easy to see a path for Dak to have a much better season this year. Like some of the interceptions he had, I can't remember the stat, but I was reading something this week that basically suggested that he got very unlucky with the turnovers he did have. I think that the Cowboys, as much as they say they want to be really run heavy, there's only so much they can do when Tony Pollard and Malik Davis are your only options. So they've got CeeDee Lamb, they've got Michael Gallup, we've got Brandon Cooks. So that is a team that is set up to be able to pass. And if it means that Dak Prescott ends up being efficient instead of high volume, then I'll take that all day. And I definitely don't mind that. And yeah, I probably do lean into stacks a little more than I should at times. I think it's very easy to break ties between stuff like that. When you're on the clock and you're drafting 4 or 5 teams at once, do you break ties off things like stacks, or are you more just often relying on your rankings and trusting them to bring you a better team overall?
See, I think DK is a little bit different than underdog when I'm used to because DK, I just noticed like I want my QBs and I want 2 decent QBs, and then I just want to be done. Tight end, I just don't value, and that's why. I mean, if that was Kirk or Ridley late or like earlier in the draft, then we're on the clock. Then it's like, yeah, okay, I want to stack them with Lawrence, but here, like Ingram, like his breakout might have been last year. Like I'm not thinking he's going to have the same kind of season, the same stats. What Jacksonville's just loaded up with players across the board on the whole offense. That's why I'm okay with Lawrence. Even if we don't get a stack, you still have Zay Jones, you have Tank Bigsby. Like, people don't like to stack QB with running back, but those are things that I'm liking to do more so. As far as Dak goes, I actually love all the negativity around that offense. McCarthy, what he's saying. I love like the Kellen Moore went to the Chargers, so everyone's just assuming, all right, they're not going to pass. They're going to pass 12 times a game, and it just keeps his value keeps going down and down and down. And Jerry Jones is the guy there. Lamb's there. Gallup's there. Cooks is there. Ferguson could be a breakout. Like, they're going to pass the ball, and you're getting a discounted player. The Cowboys are good offense, so I like it. But
For me, I think like Dak is clearly a tier above kind of Kirk Cousins, probably in a similar range to Tua if Tua's healthy. But I found myself clicking Dak more often with Deshaun Watson. I think I'm expecting him to be better this year than he was last year, and the Browns to be more pass happy. But it just feels easy because you know what to expect from Dak, and I feel like there's more good than bad with him. So through 9 rounds, we've got 2 quarterbacks, 2 running backs, and 4 wide receivers. Kind of in a range now where seeing some running backs creeping in as wide receivers, Elijah Moore, there's David Njoku of Cleveland as well. Antonio Gibson a little bit further down. AJ Dillon, somebody I've not found myself really clicking on this year. Or any of these players you've ended up with a lot of, James?
James Cook's the guy I've been high on. AJ Dillon's actually a guy I've been really high on. So it's funny that we're on opposite ends there. So Gibson, I love. Like, those are all guys I want part of my portfolio. Elijah Moore would probably be my pick here.
Just kind of gives a crazy zoom in as we come back to it. Yeah, I like Elijah Moore. I think there's definite paths to failure for him. It's particularly if somebody like DeAndre Hopkins ended up in Cleveland as well. But what he is when he hits on DraftKings is the type of receiver who could see 7 receptions a game. And over here, where you're getting a full point per reception, that can be really valuable. So we'll be back up after this turn. Michael sort of apologising for the Zay Jones pick there. Was it Zay Jones he got? I just didn't quite see that.
So Zay Jones is another guy. Like, if I have Lawrence and I don't get Zay Jones, I don't care. Like, Zay Jones had his breakout last year. Like, he's not going to have that same season. It might be similar. Like, and last year you get him in the 20th round. So, like, I'm not sad. But I'd go. I like Charbonnet and Gibson here. So, and
okay, well, I'll let you call it Charbonnet or Gibson. Which one?
I'd probably go Charbonnet just because let's play for second half. Even though Kenneth Walker is one of my favorites, but.
Yeah, I really like Kenneth Walker. Just it feels like I'm more confident in Charbonnet having a good season than I am Kenneth Walker. I think, like, particularly at cost, it feels like Kenneth Walker, he wasn't particularly good as a pass catcher. He was very good at, getting the yardage that he needed and then occasionally creating big runs. But Charbonnet, if he is pass catching, then it's particularly on DK full PPR, it just feels easier.
Question. So before they drafted Charbonnet, where were you putting Walker in your rankings?
I was taking Walker at the back end of round 2.
Yeah.
I think I wasn't quite high enough to push him into the middle because it felt like there was a chance they'd take someone. I remember joking that, Pete Carroll's wet dream would be ending up being able to take Bijan Robinson and pair the 2 of them together. But yeah, it's tricky because I do really like Kenneth Walker, and he was a player I had a lot of last year. It felt like the market was inefficient on him, and getting him in sort of like the 9th, 10th round at times was just such an easy pick. And he did me really well. And I think sometimes it's difficult when you've got a player who did really well for you one season, being able to detach from him the next year when things aren't quite as good. is a little tricky and something I could probably do a little better with. So we've got Michael asking, what's your take on A-Chain? He was really dropping a lot over the weekend. Yeah, he's been dropping because obviously the connections with Dalvin Cook and people expecting that Dalvin Cook could end up in Miami. How do you see that situation playing out, James? Do you think that it's worth taking any dips you can get on A-Chain?
I think so. I think you want to get part. I think you want to buy into him. I mean, what was he? Was he second or third round? He was third round, right?
I think it
Third
was
round.
third round. Yeah,
Yeah,
maybe.
yeah. I think it's just part of a portfolio. You want some of that. You want the Dolphins are a solid team, good offense. Yeah, we like Mostert and Wilson. It could be crowded, like you think. There could be three guys there, but I feel like all those guys are gonna get kind of rotate in. One's gonna get hurt, and the other one's gonna step up. That's why we love best ball because
Yeah.
we don't have to do the thinking there. We're betting on kind of player and our roster construction. Like you want to draft him probably more as your running back 4, like right here. Maybe if he falls to you, like it's a good pick for us.
Yeah, I think A-Chain's a player I find an easy click because he's lightning fast. I think he ran like a 4.3240. And those kind of players, they don't always require huge amounts of touches to have huge fantasy impact. But, if Devin A-Chain gets on the field and suddenly rips off a 60-yard run, it's absolute quids in, as we would say over in here in England. We're back on the clock with Tyler Boyd, Khalil Herbert, Dalton Kincaid, Damian Harris,
Harris is my guy here. So Harris, I actually own more Harris than I do Nick Chubb. So
Harris is somebody I have plenty of. I've got 21% in this contest, 21% on DraftKings, 9% in this contest. So I'm more than happy to take him. So we've got a 2-4-5 build now. So we're probably pretty well set at running back. We'll be back up in a second. And around this area, we've got tight ends. It's kind of like a bit of a tight end hotspot with Dalton Kincaid, who's dropped 16 spots past his ADP. Then we've got Okonkwo right about his ADP, Cole Kmet, Greg Dulcich.
Yeah, so you're gonna hate my suggestion here then.
Let's hear it.
Oh, see, I was gonna say Herbert. So I was gonna say Herbert, and then we're done at running back. My next one would be Boyd. So that would be my next choice on this board. I will send you the $10 because I think we should not draft a tight end until the last 4 picks and just take 4 tight ends.
I'm completely down with that, James.
Yeah.
And then, of course, Tyler Boyd goes to pick before us. So back to the drawing board.
We can wipe that out, and you could take. I like Cole Kmet a lot, and you could go one of these. Gallup. Get Gallup.
Let's take Gallup. Yeah, I like that. It gives us a little stack. It's something.
Yeah, you're gonna have nightmares if you didn't get a stack.
I would have shoehorned it into the end some way or another. Got Lundar in the chat says, I do like Charbonnet at these prices. I think there's a good chance he has fewer touches than Walker, but just as many fantasy points. I think that's a great point. It's like how players score when they do score is always worth considering. Got Surplus in the chat as well saying Gallup, baby. I find myself really drawn to Gallup this year because, last year he was going several rounds higher and he was coming off his ACL injury. This year, he's a further year removed from an ACL injury. We know that's something that can help a lot of players out. It's just basic common sense, really. But it's just nobody seems to want to draft him. But it's like, well, I'll take the dip all year. Of course, we've got Goblin in the chat as well. Big Gallup fan.
I think, I've said this before on my timeline. I think Gallup's gonna outscore Brandon Cooks, and that's I don't know. I just like Gallup at the price. I'm willing to take the price difference between Cooks and Gallup and go Gallup. And
I don't think that should even be a hot take. I think for me that just seemed sensible, and in many ways I'm surprised that they're being drafted differently to that. And I'll keep saying, you look up here. Brandon Cooks went at the back end of the 7th round. 5 rounds later, you're talking about Michael Gallup. And Michael Gallup, last year he had fewer deep targets than he'd had in several years. It seemed like, the Cowboys weren't using him quite that same way, but Noah Brown's moved on now, and it feels like it's ripe for Michael Gallup to be the deep target again. And love me some deep target wide receivers when it comes to best ball. I'm
I think
having
it's
a
a, I think it's another thing people are just out on the Cowboys passing game. So like people don't want to Gallup. Cooks is just I don't know. Cooks is just a guy to me, and it's fine, but he's not exciting in best ball for me.
I think there's a very real chance for what we saw from Cooks last year wasn't entirely down to the situation just with the Texans. I mean, he
Mm-hmm.
regressed in loads of categories and loads of efficiency metrics. And yes, Davis Mills wasn't as good as he was the previous year, and the Texans really struggled at times. But would I be surprised if Brandon Cooks just looked old this year and wasn't able to recreate the magic that he'd had at earlier points? Not at all. We're kind of getting to a few picks away, but if you're here and if you're not subscribed, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button. We are on the path to 800. I need 11 of you to go and hit that button tonight, so we go to 800 and I can go get some sleep. When we get back to our pick, so we're at 2460. I think, we can look. We've got Bijan Robinson, so is he the kind of running back that you'd handcuff with Tyler Algier? I know that's something you spoke about at times this offseason.
Personally, probably not, but at a cost. Like if we don't make Algier pick here, and next we come around the next turn and he's still there, I'm like, oh yeah, okay, that's fine.
I
Throw
think
him in
the other
there.
running back who stands out to me is Tank Bigsby, who you mentioned earlier. I mean, obviously, it'll give us a minor stack with Trevor
Yeah,
Lawrence, but and then Michael took Tank
yeah.
Bigsby.
Tank was the guy I wanted there for your Lawrence stack, and I think naked Lawrence is fine because he could
Yeah.
rush for 6 touchdowns.
So
Um,
anybody standing out for you? There's Devin Singletary a bit lower, Roshan Johnson, Raheem Mostert. 10
I
seconds.
like MVS for just a spike week guy. Like it's a guy you don't need, but it's like a luxury pick on this team.
Yeah,
And if he goes off 2 weeks for you, and it's fine. And maybe one of those is the playoff weeks.
Okay, so we're back on the clock again. Do you want to take a running back here and be done with the position? We take Mostert. There's Singletary.
Singletary's my guy. You could do Roshan if you just want to keep doing the rookie thing.
Let's go Singletary. I really like him. I think, they'll be playing Tennessee twice in the playoffs, which I don't expect Tennessee to be great. So it's a bet that I'm quite happy to make. And I think, Damian Pierce showed last year he kind of struggled a bit down the stretch. Matt, thank you very much for subscribing. One closer to 800. I should get some sleep tonight. But yeah, I mean, Marcus Valdes-Scantling's one, which I know he burned people last year. I mean, the hype got pushed too far, and I was definitely guilty of expecting him to deliver a bit more than he did. But the thing with Marcus Valdes-Scantling was that he stayed on the field for the Chiefs. He rarely came off the field. He ran routes at a higher percentage than like Juju Smith-Schuster and obviously Sky Moore. And if Kadarius Toney struggles through injury, which wouldn't surprise anyone, then Valdes-Scantling still has a role to play. And 5, 6 rounds cheaper than last year. I'm okay with that. I mean, this feels like a fair price for somebody of Valdes-Scantling's sort of talents.
Yeah, so the Chiefs are tough, right? No one knows what to do and value those receivers. And I feel like Tony, I feel like Rice, and who's the other dude?
Sky Moore.
Yeah, Sky Moore. Like all 3 of those guys, they're really hard names to click. I cannot click them. MVS, he's later picked them all. He's pretty much a later pick all of them, kind of side by side with Rice, I guess. But he's just easy, especially as your wide receiver 6, 7 in a best ball draft where you're looking for spike weeks. The guy, isn't he $10 million he's getting paid? You're getting a piece of Mahomes there. I just think it's perfect kind of player for your best ball construction. So that's kind of why I like him. I think there's a lot less risk than I think Tony's one of the worst picks right now in best ball.
I think if DeAndre Hopkins ended up taking a small deal so that he could get to somewhere like the Chiefs, Kadarius Toney's ADP would plummet. Marcus Valdes-Scantling's ADP probably wouldn't drop too far down. I mean, that's kind of how I read the situation. So back up in a couple of picks here. It's an area where there's a couple of quarterbacks, CJ Stroud, Brock Purdy, but we talked about how we were kind of okay with what we've got. Alec Pierce at wide receiver, Curtis Samuel, Ezekiel Elliott, Hunter Renfrow, Chase Brown, Kenny Gainwell.
Alec Pierce and Gainwell are guys I like here.
Let's go Alec Pierce. He's somebody I've not drafted so far this season, but I'm not sure why.
What's our build right now? So we're
at 2580. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 picks left. So do you want to start looking at tight end now, or do you want to push that down and really just hammer that with our last 4 picks?
Yeah, your call. So I don't know who's at tight end right now.
At tight end, we could take Hayden Hurst.
No, all these guys are the same. Don't do tight end.
Cool. So we could take Gus Edwards, Kenny Gainwell. Let's take Kenny Gainwell and be done there. So now we've got 2680. So out of the last 4 picks, we can just use them all on tight ends if that's.
Yeah, so I would just throw up your queue here with tight ends. And that's what I'd do right now. And you could walk away from this draft. Put like 15 tight ends in your queue and you're done. Boom. Gone to your next draft.
Do you find that there's any of these kind of tight ends that you've been clicking on routinely more often than others?
So you don't do rankings, obviously, because none of these guys are in rankings.
No, I don't. I find I probably should load my rankings in because I do my rankings for FantasyPros Expert Consensus Rankings. We're on my website, but I just find.
Now let's look at your queue, and we'll take some of these guys out that are awful.
Okay, so Hayden Hurst, Tyler Conklin, Zach Ertz.
Get Zach Ertz out of there.
Yeah, Isaiah Likely, Luke Musgrave, Jake Ferguson, Noah Fant, Trey McBride, Hunter Henry, Jelani Woods, Cade Orton, DeAndre Washington.
Washington's off there. CJ's out of there. Oliver's out of there. Coons out of there. Oh, here's a fun. We didn't get anybody on the Trevor Lawrence. They have that other rookie, that strange kid. Like he could be a 20th round guy if you are desperate for a stack there. Like I don't think I've drafted him yet, but it's just a thought.
Yeah, I get to this point in the draft and it's like I think a player like that, I'm fine throwing a 20th round pick at virtually anyone, and doing it in the way of stacks definitely makes as much sense as anything. But yeah, I just get to this kind of point in the draft sometimes, and it's like, well, if I'm not confident about a position, how many dart throws do you want? So depending on what the first 1 or 2 tight ends we are, I'd definitely be all right then going real dart throw with it. Let's see where tight ends are. We've seen Mike Gesicki go off. We've seen Taysom Hill, Michael Mayer. Have you been drafting much of a rookie tight ends this year, James?
Rookie tight end. Oh, I love the Green Bay rookie tight end. He's one is always there in the last round or 2. So he's one probably I'm higher on. I love Kincaid, but he's like 0% ownership for me. He's a Utah guy, so yeah, I've watched some on the Utes a lot, and I like him. And they have another guy, Brent Keithie's coming out too. So yeah, I like the tight ends out of Utah. So I like him, but Dawson Knox is a great value, so I'm not passing that up.
Yeah, I've been clicking much more Knox than Kincaid. I think the hype seems to have come back a bit, but like I was in drafts a couple of weeks ago and seeing Kincaid go in the back end of the 9th round, early 10th round, and that just seems like crazy. There's a very easy path to failure, and even if he succeeds, what does it look like? Is he going to give you more than 6 points per game? So yeah, I think if I've got Josh Allen, I probably would be more open to doing it, but I'd also be more open to just passing him by and picking up Dawson Knox 2 rounds later. So since our last pick, we've only seen Tyler Conklin go off the board so far in terms of tight ends. Shout out to JJ Harper. Appreciate you being here and checking us out. Hit the subscribe button if you haven't already. Like I say, we'll be back on Wednesday with Colm of RotoViz, talking all things kind of zero RB and how he's finding the zero RB landscape and getting him to dive into a DraftKings draft, which he's very much just been in the FFPC and Underdog Street, so it should be good fun. Seeing in terms of the wide receivers, Matt Collins, Wan'Dale Robinson, Hunter Renfrow, Chase Claypool, Greg Dortch. And when you see stuff like that, I'm kind of fine with being done with wide receiver by this point in the draft, because these guys are all, they feel very replaceable, really.
Yeah, and I don't think this is how you want to draft every draft, but it's kind of like a fun way. I've been drafting on DraftKings. I think I was on your stream when you had Pat on, and I kind of did the same thing. So
Okay,
yeah,
so we're back up. Hayden Hurst, Isaiah Likely, Luke Musgrave, all there. It feels like
I'd probably go Hurst.
let's go Hurst. I'm kind of fine with that. I think by now we've seen what he is, but in that Carolina offense, there's no reason Hayden Hurst couldn't command a decent target share when you're talking about Adam Thielen and DJ Chark and Mingo. It's definitely not imposing. Back up, do you want to take Luke Musgrave or Isaiah Likely or Jake Ferguson for a bit of a Cowboys stack?
Yeah, let's go Ferguson. You missed on the Lawrence stack, so at least you'll have two guys here.
Well, we've got little bits of week 17 correlation you can see over here. We've not gone crazy with it in this draft, but I like what we've got. We've got Garrett Wilson against Elijah Moore. It's a bit of a revenge game narrative for Elijah Moore, that one. We've got Najee Harris against Zach Charbonnet, so you've got the rookie who could be coming on strong down the stretch. San Francisco at Washington. That could easily be a blowout, so perhaps Jahan Dotson's getting plenty of deep shots. And then we've got Trevor Lawrence correlated with Hayden Hurst for whatever that's worth as well. So, no, I mean, I like this team. It's different to how I build a team, but I think that's one of the real values in doing stuff like this and drafting with different people. It definitely just helps open up your mind to different stuff. And when you look back at your teams at the end of the season and you see what worked and what didn't work, that can be the point where you open your eyes to it. Like, I was digging through the DraftKings data recently, and of the teams who made the final, it was almost an identical percentage of robust RB teams to zero RB teams in a year which was supposed to be fantastic for zero RB teams. So I'm definitely trying to be more draft by, I guess, as would be the word that Davis might say. So we're it's like I sometimes feel like I get a little too glued to constructions and certain theories and bits like that. Is there anything you feel like you kind of have to pull yourself away from doing, or points where you're taking five and looking at your teams and looking at your stuff and saying, all right, I need to stop doing that and start trying to mix things up a bit more?
Oh, for sure. Just when you're drafting at a high volume, the reason you started drafting is because it's fun. But when you start doing it and everything looks exactly the same, it's no longer fun. So to bring that back, and then mix it up and kind of give you different combos of players and whatnot, and to kind of get your ownership at a level that you like, with each player, so you're not too high or too low on certain players. Yeah, you always mix it up. Do five. Like, you know what? These next five, I'm gonna build 4 tight ends at the end. I don't care what tight ends they are. Just younger guys that I think have a shot at touchdowns or whatnot. Or I don't know, just try different things. I a lot in the puppy 2 there. I started doing Kelsey Mahomes starts, and then I'd followed up with Andrews and tried to get Lamar as well. Like, anytime I got a middle pick, that's how I'd start my drafts. So and those were fun. I like those builds.
Yeah, I love what you're saying, because beyond all else, it needs to be fun. So we're back on Noah Fant at the top on ADP, Hunter Henry, Jelani Woods.
Yeah,
And then
no offense, my guy. It gives you your Najee thing too. I guess you got a week 17 thing going there.
yeah, a little bit more correlation and nothing that we've had to chase to get it either. But I think when now, you're talking about, like, not so long ago, tight end felt like a real weakness. But between Hayden Hurst, Noah Fant, Jake Ferguson, and whoever we pick here,
Yeah,
I'm
so now you can still get Hunter Henry, or yeah, like Hunter Henry's pretty good last pick in a 4 tight end build. So now you just want a touchdown on any of those 4 guys, and you're fine.
exactly that. So I mean, people are kind of just assuming that Mike Gesicki is going to steal all the tight end snaps, but New England will run 2 tight ends on the field at a time. They'll use Mike Gesicki, hopefully, in a way that suits him more as that big slot type receiver, and potentially both him and Henry can be doing well for the team, and it wouldn't surprise me if Hunter Henry finished with more touchdowns than Mike Gesicki. That could easily be there. We've got a question from Lundar in the chat. Let's say a 150 max contest. Is there a minimum you'd enter versus skipping it? Do you feel like it's, is 25 BBMs worth it? From my point of view, I think if you can get to about 30 in a 150 max, obviously you'd be less EV compared to people who are maxing it, because just by nature we've got more entries and more chances to win. But 30 gives you a reasonable portfolio. Is that how you see it, James, or do you need to be all or nothing on a lot of these contests?
My philosophy last year was if Underdog's going to release a $5 contest, I'm going to max it regardless. If I have to do it in one day, like that was just my thing. This year, the way I'm looking at it is I think I'll still be on that on the $5. Like anything above $5, I'm probably going to be like, I don't need to do 150, or I don't need to do 150 of these rookies and sophomores. I can do 25 to 50 of them and feel good about that. So I'm changing it up that way, and I just feel like the industry's growing. There's going to be so many more tournaments offered, and I don't need to try to be a hero in every single contest that comes out.
Yeah, it's a great point. I think it's, if you're at a point where it's like, you're making good teams and you're making teams that you're happy with, then that can sometimes be worth a lot more than trying to just get as many as possible. Because come August, I mean, the sweat is going to be on to try and get as many teams as we can before these contests close. There'll be overlay probably on Drafters and DraftKings, and it gets tricky. So I'd rather build good teams that I was happy with than just try and get sheer volume in and hope that I get lucky on stuff when I'm not entirely confident in it. So that's the end of the draft, and we've got the 2684 build. It's pretty regular room. There's one team which went on auto after having Josh Allen early and ended up with 4 quarterbacks. But we kind of talked about it. It's like, I feel really happy with this team in terms of how it went, because we had Bijan and Najee early, and then left running back alone until round 10. Hit on a few more running backs there, and then by round 16 we were done. Wide receiver, I kind of view 8 as the minimum I'd be happy with on DraftKings, because you do start 3 as well as having the flex. But how do you feel about this team, James?
This is pretty similar to probably 60% of my builds. So this is kind of how I do. I just think it's a solid way to give you a shot at good players. You try to focus more upside, maybe higher ceiling. Maybe we didn't hit that with all our players, but it's more of a construction build as well, where we're looking at spots in the draft where there's value, and that's kind of how we attacked it. DK, you need to know the draft rooms, and that's why I was kind of more on the 2 QBs right there. I know it was kind of early maybe for a Dak. We should have just waited and got somebody else, but I kind of like the combo there. If you look at the bottom of the draft, and the reason, and I think this is going to shift, you're going to see this move, like these tight ends are going to bump up, because I think 20 rounds, most people are going to start taking 3 tight ends, so it's going to be harder to get these guys like this. But my way of thinking is, when you took Pierce and Gainwell, so those were your last 2 at that position, look at all the other teams. Like, you got a guy taking, like, I don't know, or Robert Woods and Shakir, or a Malik Davis. And, like, I just don't like those last 3 rounds as much at wide receiver and running back.
I mean, that team hadn't taken a wide receiver since round 8, and then try to make up for it in volume there. That feels a lot trickier than what we did with tight end. I've got a question from Alex in the chat here. If you're 50-50 on 2 QBs, do you ever take their defense into consideration? Example, QB1 has a better defense and should get the ball more, or QB2 has a bad defense, so it seems to be in a shootout. Is that something you ever think about, James?
I mean, that's a good way to look at it. If you're going in depth like that, yeah, I think that's any kind of little edge you can find. I'm all for it, and yeah, I don't think that far in depth. So yeah, I like that one.
Yeah, it can be tricky projecting defense and sort of what's going to happen, but I think that's more tricky at the top end. Teams like the Jets, they could regress on defense after having a really good team last year, but when you're talking about teams at the bottom who are clearly in tank, I mean, name an Arizona Cardinals cornerback name,
Right,
it
right.
gets very tricky. So that's definitely something I think, you can consider for them. And I've found myself clicking Kyler Murray a little more often. But yeah, so we'll wrap things up there. Before we get out of here, James, do you want to tell the people where they can find you and if you got anything coming down the line with Football Guys?
Yeah, I'm trying to refine my just tune up my rankings there. So hopefully I get that. But once I get them all updated, I'll shout out on Twitter and people can check them out if you're interested. I would like to get to a point where I just have those available for free to anyone. They can just do the CSV upload. You don't have to give me $1. I don't care. I'd share my rankings gladly. But thing with rankings for me, I'm drafting those 5 teams, or I draft 10 to 20 teams a day. I update my rankings about 3 times a day, maybe sometimes. Like they're always changing. I see a lot of people just don't ever put that in there and they just draft off ADP. I've tried it a couple of times. I don't know how you guys do that. So
I think for me, it's one where I want to be in tune with DraftKings, particularly. ADP plays such a big part of it. My rankings differ so much from it that
Mhm.
when I put them in there, there's just certain players who I end up getting and certain players I don't. And I will get around to putting them in at some point because there's players I want to be more aggressive on. But yeah, it's just I'm quite happy because I draft the vast majority of my teams just on DraftKings. You
Mhm.
get to know how you view each round and you get to know how you view each player. And yeah, and I'm a solo drafter at a time. So for me, it becomes quite, once you've done a good portion, it's like anything with drafting, you just get to know the draft board really.
Right. Yeah. And I think maybe once every month or two, I'll show, like, I break down underdog ADP or the current ADP, and then I'll get my exposures and I'll line it up with like first round all the way to 18th round, what exposures each player I have. And then I can look here, my top 3 in each round or my bottom 3, I don't have any exposure. I, I don't know if you know anybody out there in the industry can put together like a template of that. Like that would be, I think those kind of things are kind of cool for people to look at more so. And then for volume drafters, if you're a volume drafter, like stuff like that's super valuable. Like I don't know if any site has that out there, but maybe I
Yeah,
just gave
no,
that
I
away
think
to
that's
someone. But
it's definitely interesting. That's something to mull over. So before we get out of here, if you're not subscribed already, please do just leave me that subscribe. Leave me a comment. Tell us what you thought about the team we drafted. Are you leaving tight end till really late in the draft like we did, or do you feel like we got crazy with it? Shout out to Michael Davis, Surplus of Cash, everyone in the chat. Novo, really appreciate you dropping by. Alex, JJ, thanks a lot. We're going to be back again very soon. We've got loads more best ball content coming. Rich dropped a new Dynasty show today. Go check that out. We'll catch you soon.